Hello, welcome to another episode of the Carousel podcast. I'm Isaac Simpson. With me today is Peachy Keenan. You will definitely have seen her name around in our scene. She is tweeter of bangers, writer for American Mind, and author of a new book called Domestic Extremist: A Practical Guide to Winning the Culture War. Um, Obviously, domestic extremist is a pun there. She is a mother of five kids and a great writer, a copywriter, so perfect for this podcast about propaganda. And I call her a machine gun of deft insights and funny one-liners, a machine gun Keenan, as you said, Peachy. And she's a must follow in our scene, and she has great kind of philosophical grounding, but also really clever, zingy, like wit. So I feel like you're kind of a person that's really well suited to be bringing some of our ideas mainstream. Do you feel that way?
That was a great intro. I was trying to live up to those expectations. You set the bar so high. I think so. I mean, that's definitely my goal. Like, as a writer and as a, poster or whatever, I definitely feel like so much great stuff is coming out of, the people that we know and we follow. But if you want to have real influence and you want to, you know, change the culture, you do need to sort of try to win the normies. If we, like, I just watched Gladiator with my 11-year-old. He loved it. And like, there's that great line, win the crowd, win the mob, and you win your freedom. And I sort of feel like that. We have to win the mob if we want victory.
Yeah, it's funny. I've been thinking a lot about the mob recently and what that means. Because I just got back from Vegas and I tweeted about it. I was just with a group of people who, I don't dislike them. I want to be clear that I don't dislike these people. They just strike me as true normies, like they are
Yeah.
truly a group of normies. Like they're not, and I've spent my entire life swimming through these groups of guys that are normies in one way or another, right? And some of them are more intense, like the real estate guys and the banker guys, and some are more soft around the edges, particularly people in LA. Um, but they all kind of have in common this same, just like kind of insensitivity, I think,
Hmm.
the things that you and I like really would bother somebody like you or me, like you know what I mean,
Like what?
like if they were to see a advertisement that is shilling transgenderism or is saying
Oh yeah.
toxic masculinity, or watching the NFL. The NFL is probably the best example. When the NFL starts covering its field in "Don't be racist," right, which it does, it just doesn't like register for them really. It's like they aren't hit by it. They don't notice it. Like with this group, we walked past a Victoria's Secret in Vegas, and at this new Victoria's Secret, it was all mannequins that were like overweight mannequins.
Oh yeah, I just saw those at the mall a few weeks ago. Yeah.
And like the main picture was like a big fat black woman in modeling on
Right.
lingerie. That was even worse than the mannequins, by the way. Like the mannequins weren't actually really fat, they were just kind of like thick. But this woman that was the main picture for the whole store was like obese. And
Yeah.
like they just walk right by. They walk to the club and they dance to Little John, and it's just they don't notice, like they don't even like notice
Right.
it, really.
Yeah, our curse is noticing things. And that's
Being
why
sensitive. Yeah.
we're online. But I also swim in normie circles. God bless them. There have to be normies. They we can like show them the light, we can't all be
Can you?
doing it. We can't all be posting. Yeah, I think that guys like that, I mean, I obviously know a lot of guys like that. They seem to be kind of on a leash. Some of them, I'm not saying your friends, I don't know your friends, but I think they're on a little bit of a short leash from the wife. And they know that if they hear what she says and her reactions to certain like oh, isn't it wonderful? The NFL ad, football is gay now, honey. They like that incredible ad, football is gay. Like, yes, that's true. And the husbands just want peace,
Yeah,
they
right.
want peace.
It's
They want harmony. She can do her own thing. They're not going to get the argument. And they've kind of been maybe, I don't know, trained a little bit by they're living in the longhouse and they've internalized it, I think.
right, right. Well, I mean, the part that so this particular group was actually a lot of them were single still, and these guys are late 30s. So if there was a 40th birthday, and a lot of them are still single. So these guys are really like very much casualties of all of the things that you write about so well.
Yeah.
And let me just
Wow.
say, just so people in listening can understand, when you're reading Peachy's writing, like Domestic Extremist and the other stuff that you write for American Mind, you have a very distinct style. And your style is like, again, I think machine gun is a great is a great word. Also, what's her name? Who I was just listening to, Inez Stepman had a great kind of like, she called you a based something queen. Like you are hammering on these images that we're seeing in clown world. So all the things we're talking about, football is gay, chop your kid's dick off in school, all these things that we're seeing everywhere, all these signals. And as a copywriter, like you're also super sensitive to this shit because you're like, how those things are made and what they mean and what they stand for. But then you hit on all these like cultural touch points, you describe them, and then you kind of show their hypocrisy with another image, and then you provide sort of a grounding in theory. So you talk like about Moldbug, you talk about people like James Poulos and other thinkers, and Nietzsche. You talk about thinkers that are very influential in our space. So you have this kind of perfect like dense, I would call it like dense in a good way, like take on that. It feels very like mainstream political. It feels to me like a Tucker Carlson monologue.
Oh, well, that's a wonderful compliment. He has great writers. I write a lot about, yeah, like, society and politics and stuff, but my first love is like, comedy writing. And I was always a fan of like great ads, because look at that copywriter just nailed that tagline, like puns. Like I always loved magazines. As when I was young, I would read Egg magazine and Spy. Like I just love that wit. The New Yorker, not New Yorker anymore, what it used to be. I just love that sort of cosmopolitan like wittiness. Like in college, I was obsessed with like Dorothy Parker, and I loved stand-up comedy. And so now, I got like spit out with all that background into this like, right-wing political environment. And so like my only real way to process it all and deal with it is to just like write the way I'm used to writing, with that kind of background, and like pick apart all these like funny, ridiculous, insane, tragic trends in our culture. And I think also what also helps is being Generation X, because we didn't have any access to, there's no internet, no cell phone, nothing. We had nothing until we were already kind of formed. We were already fully formed sort of as like young adults, and then all this stuff kind of came out, and so we were able to always hold it a little bit as like this at an ironic, like arms length distance.
Yeah. So what were we? Yeah, no, I think that's very telling that you have that kind of background, and I think that you're putting the pieces together in a really cool way. Yeah, and bringing this into the mainstream in a way that I think a lot of other people can't do. I also like what you're saying about the woman's role, and we'll get to that. I think that you're kind of saying that like actually the key to a lot of this stuff is the woman. But I guess what we were talking about is like that group of just kind of guys who are a casualty of this thing, but they can't see it. Right? It's like they're not mad about it. They're mad at racists. they want to be. I worked with a guy who was a perfect example of this at the Ace Hotel when I was bartending, and he was an actor, really good looking guy, actor, probably late 30s, single, had no money, very promising. And he was so mad. He was like so angry, but he was angry at racists.
Right.
It's like, dude,
Yeah.
you live in Los Angeles. There are no racists around. Like, what are you
Right.
so mad about? Why are
So
you so
mad.
angry? And
It's like,
it's because the propagandists, as Bernays so perfectly described in books that for some reason nobody has read, they're so good at directing that guy's anger about his shitty, terrible life towards like racists. He was always talking about John Brown. Like, I want to be like John Brown and destroy the racists.
oh
And it's
my
like, bro,
gosh.
what are you like? You're just completely living in a fantasy world.
Right. I'm not going to settle down. I can't settle down and get married and have a
Yeah,
family until we get rid of racism, until we
right. Yeah, because
defund the
that's what I stand
police
for.
and solve climate change. I can't do anything until those things are fixed.
Yeah, yeah. Which
Yeah,
is
there's a
just
lot
so
of
sad.
there's a lot of I mean, you say there's casualties among your friend group. I mean, I think women are there's even more casualties. I mean, there's, the fields are littered with bodies from as casualties of 50 years of feminism. And I mean, that is really, in my mind, the number one issue, the number one like cause, if you want to like find like why is everything like so shitty, like what's going on, like trans drag kids and all this stuff. I think it's really tied to women being kind of quote liberated, from the patriarchy, and their liberation is like a kind of strange like slavery. And my book is really a reaction to that, and it's like my attempt to like redirect that energy to like, no, you guys are totally lost, like you're,
Yeah, but
they
it's like
look at it.
they're so it's just like I'm so fascinated by this right now, just coming off this weekend, and I don't know how to get them to notice. I don't think they ever will. That's the
Right.
thing. And I think that's what
Yeah.
Moldbug misses. Moldbug talks about, yeah, I mean, how familiar are you with the whole frogs and elves and dark elves thing?
Yeah. Yeah. I know. Yeah.
Okay. So we talk about this a lot. Moldbug sets up this, very fascinating and I'm not saying there's anything bad about the paradigm, but he sets up this kind of metaphor where there's the elves who are the elites. That's the propagandists that we're talking about, the hidden state, as Bernays would call it.
Right.
Then there's the dark elves, who are people like Curtis himself, who are elite, but
They're traitors.
they're traitors, they're class traitors, they're right wing, they're monarchists, whatever. They're people like us. Not that I'm a monarchist, but they're people who want to change the system that's in place, more or less. And then everybody else is a hobbit. And he says, what motivates the elves, both dark and not, is living a beautiful life, which I found to be so telling. And because it just kind of shows like what elite people is motivating them at all. And then like, why are they acting this way? And then what do the hobbits want? They want to grill and raise kids. And I think like that hobbit that he's talking about is a right-wing NASCAR hobbit, right? Like these are
Right.
people that are actually right-wing from birth. They're blood and soil, they're Scotch Irish, the people that, dealt with the wildernesses of Appalachia and made the country what it is and became
Right.
cowboys and blah, blah, blah. Like, yeah, sure. Those people want to grill and they want to grow and have kids. But he's missing like the largest group of them all, which is just normie neutral dudes. And normie neutral dudes are liberal because of course they're liberal, because that's what the whole thing we're fighting against is this like information regime that makes them liberal. So like I just am, I think how do you like, is that the question I want to ask is that group a lost cause? Is there any point in even talking to them at all?
No. Like, no. I say, people ask me, guys ask me sometimes, like, for dating advice, like, where am I going to find, how am I going to, the girls on the dating apps are just like, they're crazy. Like, you can't date them. They've been around the block, a few too many times. And I'm like, well, if the apples in the barrel are rotten, you got to get them off the tree. I mean, we sort of have to, it's sad, but yeah, if past a certain age, these people are not going to change. I mean, I don't know what it would take. Like, they could have the scimitar at their throat and they would still be screaming, but I'm an ally, they don't.
Yeah.
I don't think that they're going to get it. I do think we have to sort of target the younger, people who are younger, or people who really get to the point where they realize they've found a black pill lying on the ground, and they put it in their mouth, and like they realize, oh, why am I so depressed? Why am I so lonely? Like, why aren't I happy? I was supposed to be happy. They told me I would be happy. If I got this career and I did this and I got a Tinder account, why aren't I happy? So we're really relying on them to kind of hit rock bottom.
Yeah.
And then for us to kind of swoop in and say, hey, come over here. Like, there's maybe we can help you. I think that those guys, like your friends, they're just a little too comfortable.
Right. And they're made comfortable by, as my friend Anthony, who is the Combine on Twitter, Urbit guy, says, if we could just shut off the supply of SSRIs and porn, we'd probably be fine. Like, if we could just, at least from the male perspective, if you could just cut off the drugs I think if you just got rid of the porn, you'd be fine.
Right.
Because these guys are all just whacking it 6 times a day.
Are they?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Totally. And it's like, you wonder why they're so dumb. It's like, dude, they have no instinct. They have no like sexual instinct that's driving.
Right. You can't if someone is an addict, whatever they're addicted to, there's no talking sense to them. Like, right. So, if you're a porn addict, you can show them all the like great, funny right-wing memes you want. It's not going to stop.
No, they're never going to get it. Yeah.
Yeah. They have to go to rehab. They have to detox. And that can't really, that has to come, like any addict has to come from themselves. Like, you can't force it on anyone. It's funny, one of the reasons that I wrote this TV sitcom pilot last year, or actually it was in 2021 now, which is actually, I post about it and it's on Amazon. You guys can all buy it. Was because one of my goals is to try to break through to the great normie unwashed masses. And my strategy is, well, okay, like, no political argument you could ever make is going to change their minds. No essay, no matter how many, I could write 1,000 freaking American Mind essays. Like, it will not change their mind or, stop them from, fapping all day. But what if you could get a few of them, peel some of them off by like making them delighted, making them laugh, or shocking them and then making them laugh? Like, what if you could, it's like, I sort of equate it sometimes to like a circus, and there's a bunch of different tents and there's this freak show and that freak show. If we just can get them take a peek inside our tent, we're putting on a really great, this is the best show. This is where the fun is.
Well, right. Yeah, that's the punk rock approach. And that's what's happening. And, people forget that actually punk rock was also right wing. It got co-opted later, but actually punk rock had like Nazis where we're at all those shows. Nobody remembers this. People should watch 24-Hour Party People. Fucking great movie. And it depicts this. It shows like in the early days of Manchester when, Ian Curtis and New Order was playing, or it was, obviously Joy Division, which is a Nazi reference to begin with. It was all skinheads in their audience. And they try and like swing it like, oh, but they didn't like that. But they actually depict Ian Curtis as being like, so what? These are my people,
Right.
So I think that's what you're saying. We have to keep doing what we're doing to, create the funnest tent. And then the normies, as they're skating around, just like what happened with punk rock, they'll eventually find us and be like, okay, well, this is this is the coolest stuff this is going on. This is where people are actually talking the truth, and so I need to be here. That's what
Right.
I'm saying, right?
Right. You have to put on the best show, but
I like it. I like it.
inside the show is a little kernel of the like little secret knowledge that you're transmitting out.
Yeah, I
And
think that
like,
that's sorry.
yeah, and that's like what a meme is, it makes you laugh, but like it's exposing some like profound little nugget.
Yeah, I think that's the plan that some of these big guys have. I don't want to. I don't have any actual knowledge of this, so I'm okay saying it because I'm not like revealing a secret. But the sense I get is that the big power brokers in our space, they have this
Mhm.
same plan. They have the
Oh,
plan
that's
of
good.
like write some good shit that's not overtly right wing, which is probably like why people like me and you aren't cultivated more, to be honest. I mean, you're cultivated more than me, but I think
Hmm.
like I was cultivated before, but once I came out as like actually genuinely just like based, I
Hmm.
actually get cultivated less. And I think that that's
Hmm.
largely because the guys who are pulling the strings have this idea that what we want is, you put it perfectly with the tent thing. It's such a good metaphor. We want people who can make this kind of innocuous, fun tent from the outside, right? And then seed the ideas like ever so slightly on the inside.
Yeah, exactly. Like, so besides all this like writing I do and tweeting I do, my second love is like, entertainment and movies. And, like I said, I wrote this TV sitcom. I was long ago a TV writer's assistant. And anyway, my conception of like, well, we need to put out, based content like movies and TV and all that stuff. But like, no matter how many movies the Daily Wire makes with Gina Carano, like not a single person is gonna like go, yeah, maybe I need to like switch political parties. Like that's not,
Yeah,
and that's not their, they're preaching to the choir, and that's fine. That can be very profitable. But like, what if you did movies that were apolitical? This is my whole thesis of like where entertainment has to go. Okay, I'm giving it to you right now. What if you could make entertainment that was completely apolitical? It wasn't like overtly Christian. Jesus wasn't in anything. It doesn't talk about, there's no Yellowstone, there's no guys in cowboy hats. You know what I mean? There's none of the like typical signifiers of like this is right wing content. But instead, because it's apolitical, it actually is very political because there's no Bechdel test. There's no random trans character that serves no purpose.
it's
There's
like
no there's no gay sex scenes. Like there's a white couple and their children are both white. Like what? You literally never are allowed to see that anywhere on TV commercial anymore. Like miraculously, people of the same race can have different colored children somehow on, in the Tide commercial. So if you could produce that kind of entertainment that leads by being simply good, it's just good. It makes you laugh. I always think about like, probably one of my favorite childhood movies, probably one of yours, The Goonies.
yeah.
Why can that not be replicated? Why can't The Goonies be replicated? It's just fun. That's it.
Yeah, I it's like I love the framework of this, and I think that that is what the project of our people is right now. I just don't know if it's gonna work. I think I don't know.
Wow,
It's
Doomer.
it's just so hard to say what's gonna happen. No, I
We
have
should just give up.
hopes. So it's
Let's just unplug our computers. Let's
so I've
forget
said
it.
this before. I think there's actually and no one else. This is actually my theory. So nobody else has this yet. I
Okay.
think it's actually a two. What we're seeing is one battle is actually two battles. And so it's like the dual battle theory. Let's call it that. And I think that the first battle is against woke actual Marxists who
Right.
have somehow found their way into power, right? In the West. I honestly, it was this like group of Californians that just somehow nobody was paying attention. Like nobody was like paying enough attention to them. And then they just boom. Well, what the fuck? How the hell did they get in power?
Yeah,
What is going on?
right.
And they're, Soros is obviously a huge problem. He's like a big part of it. And so there's this group out there that seized control somehow. And the normies, even the conservatives, like people who were, never Trumpers, they didn't really get it. And they're only starting to get it now, largely because of the things people like you are writing, which is bringing this stuff to them. They're understanding, well, wait a second, why is this woke group so powerful? It doesn't make any sense. It's like they're unassailable.
Right.
I think there's this rotten group inside the system. And I think that this rotten group is going to be easier to take out than people think. Like, nobody likes to hear this, but I genuinely think if we got DeSantis in, DeSantis could pretty much take care of this group, like by himself. Like, I think he would know how to do it. I think he would know how to get the right people out of power. I think he'd prosecute the right people, or even getting Trump in there again. I think if Trump could get in there again, he would know that he would know what the project was a little better. Get these ideologues out, get people like Soros, somehow disempower them. And you're basically dealing, I mean, Thiel put it very well. It's like Wahhabism, right? It's like it's kind of crazy religion that is like infecting a small percentage of people. And the numb masses, as we're saying, are just too insensitive to really get what's going on, right? So they're just kind of like going along with it. I think you can get this group out pretty easy. Like, I think America will defeat this group simply because they can't survive with free speech. They have to destroy free speech because they're
Right.
they can't. Free speech will kill communism almost all of the time.
Right. That's true.
So I think this group will be easily to deal with. If they can just not, I don't want to say cheat because, I don't want to be accused of being whatever, but if they can just not, what did they admit to doing? What did they call it? The election? They,
fortify.
Yeah. If they can just not fortify the election to the degree that DeSantis can't win, I think if DeSantis wins, I don't know what's going to happen with Trump, but assuming that DeSantis one day gets in power, I think he can like purge these people. And we all want them purged, we all want to get rid of these people anyway. Then, however, that's battle one.
Okay.
Battle two, though, is really a much, much bigger, more difficult question, which is globalism itself. And that will be like the battle that defines the next 2,000 years. Like, we will be fighting nationalists versus globalists for a millennia. Like, that's basically what this is going to be.
Right. Yeah. Oh man, when you put it like that, need a sip drink.
All right. I'm rambling. I drank too much coffee. Let's go back to you. So, all right, Peachy Keenan. What is Peachy Keenan? Where does the name come from? Why are you anon?
Okay, well, Peachy Keenan is, I just it was like my third or fourth anon account. All my previous ones had gotten banned over the years. And so I just was looking for something that was just, random, and it's just a play on Peachy Keen, which is sort of like ironic, like, things on Twitter are not usually Peachy Keen. So it's just like an ironic little luckily it was actually like, looks like a name. And people ask me like, they'll DM me like, I have a cousin who's a Keenan. Like, do you know, Phil Keenan in Cincinnati? And I'm like, no, I'm sorry.
Yeah. That's funny. So who's the image? Who's your PFP?
Oh, okay. Well,
kind of a woman.
It's Mary Magdalene.
Oh.
And it's from an old Renaissance painting of Mary Magdalene. I just love the expression on her face. She's just looking at you, judging you. I am a, convert to Catholicism. So I'm a traditional, I was raised a secular atheist. My mother, we were raised to hate religion, hate Christians, and reject all of it. But I became a convert after I was already a parent and already married. And so for me, Mary Magdalene, I don't know if you know her story. She was like Jesus's like Girl Friday. She was a major bad girl. She was a sinner. And then he red pilled her and pulled the demons out of her, and she became a good girl. And so I kind of relate to that a little bit.
I see. Okay, cool. Very cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, so it's Mary Magdalene. That makes sense.
Right.
You actually, I mean, let's just your most fascinating conversation, part of your Kashuta conversation. So you talked to Alex Kashuta.
Oh yeah.
Alex Kashuta is another podcaster in the space who has all the exact same people I have on. I have on. She has them on first and long before me. You guys to have a very like female conversation about like
we did.
motherhood.
We did.
Like it's funny how female it is. But you get to this point that was very telling where, or not telling, but just very interesting, where you were talking about you both were said you had no choice besides to spend your 20s, dating around and, being a career person, because that's just such a strong influence in our space. But it would be like almost a fantasy or a dream if you had married your husband at like 20.
Yeah, totally.
So why is that a fantasy though?
When you like me and my generation and everyone now, like you're told to spend your 20s, self-actualizing and
self-actualizing,
finding yourself and exploring and like, who are you? And like, what do you like? And so you come out of college and you're just like on that road. Like that's what the, feminism, like that's empowering to you. That's you're working and you're not looking to settle down and you're going out all the time and you're just like living your best life, you think. And then like, you get to like, oh, I might be turning 30. Like, and she described the same sort of kind of panic, like, wait, what? Aren't I supposed to, what if I want kids? Oh yeah. Whoops. Like, and so I describe it in my book as, escaping feminism, the feminist trajectory by the skin of my teeth. And you kind of like, like when the door is coming, the big stone door thing is coming down on Indiana Jones and he has to like reach his hand through and
it's the last minute.
Yeah, pulls his hat out. Like that's how I feel. Like I pulled out of
the last train out of Auschwitz.
That's right. I somehow at the last second got, met a guy, got engaged, got married, and like got pregnant, like boom, in like 18 months. And I feel very fortunate that I was able to like have that revelation in time to pull off a decent sized family and, a marriage to a nice person. And people who wait too long, you're going to be out of luck. Like you're just not you may realize way too late in your life. And I know women like this who bitterly mourn that they can't have, they managed to maybe have one child. They would have loved to have more. If only I was a little younger, if only I had met my husband earlier. And for me and for Alex, and she's funny because she mentioned a show that I talk about, which a lot of women talk about who survive feminism, which is Sex in the City, and like I lived in New York and we were living the Sex and the City lifestyle. That was extremely pernicious influence on my generation. And I think younger women, I think we need to, do something in Minecraft about HBO. Like, I don't know. We have to stop it.
My wife started rewatching it like 2 years ago and I just watched 5 seconds and I was like, this show is satanic. Like it is a satanic show in every way.
But here's the thing, Isaac, it pulls you in, not because it's trying to like paint, which is really a promiscuous gay man's lifestyle in these like pretty colors. It draws you in with the fashion and the Manolos and the like fun girl stuff and the cute boys. But underlying it all is you can just be just like us, but it comes with like, just very intense level of promiscuity, loneliness, heartbreak, and childlessness.
How old are they supposed to be?
In the original show, I mean, they start when they're in their probably late 20s, turning 30. I think in your very first episode.
Yeah, it's so funny the differences in New York and LA, I think, because of that show. It's like it for a man, it is like impossible not to get laid in New York City. but for a woman, if in LA, it is impossible to get laid. It's like they're
Right.
so different. Um, and I don't know, like, what do you have to say about all this red pill stuff? I think you're actually the perfect person to talk about this, because when I hear you talking about this stuff, like, what I want to ask is, but isn't there a side of woman that is the word used in the red pill sphere? And I actually got red pilled by the red pill subreddit, to be honest, because I'm the exact same as you, Peachy.
Nice.
I grew up secular atheist, very classic ultra
Mm-hmm.
liberal
Mm-hmm.
upbringing, Mishling half breed, kind of, like, liberal, but
Mazel tov.
yeah, like, and yeah, liberalism as religion, that's what I would say,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
for both families, both families,
Oh
and they
boy.
both grew up like pretty privileged, both my parents.
Mm-hmm.
And I was always an asshole, I was always questioning, I was always blah blah blah, but I was totally like Obama until I voted for the first Obama, right? And I remember I was with my
Wow.
multicultural friends in New York City, and like, they were all sobbing. We were all so happy when
Oh, you
Obama
have you
won.
have you have you have token friends?
What? Yeah, no, I mean, look, George Bush sucked. George Bush was fucking terrible.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, it's no wonder
Mm-hmm.
neocons are just as bad as neoliberals. And
They're worse. Yeah.
yeah, right, worse. So it's not, we weren't totally off, and at least I realized it by the next time. But I will say, the thing that really, my red pilling moment was very clear, and it was the red pill subreddit. It was that article by the futurist, who's some like Arab guy, who wrote
Oh
a
yeah.
post about the hypergamy, or the androgyny bubble, or the, no, not androgyny. How do you say hating men? And
Uh 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 like the opposite of misogyny. I
yeah, the
forgot.
opposite of misogyny is
Hmm.
something. I can't remember.
What is that?
Um, yeah, the futurist. I can never remember what this is called. Um, it's the androgamy bubble.
One article red pilled you? Maybe I don't feel so bad anymore
No,
about
no,
my.
no. It wasn't one article. I mean, for me, it was always the most obvious in the male female dynamic. And it's not
Interesting.
like I was an incel.
Yeah.
Like, in New York City, I got laid more than anybody, at least as much as anybody else. But there was something that was like sinister, there was something bad, and there was something rotten, and I'd always felt that,
Wait,
I'd always
wait, Isaac, are you West Elm Caleb?
wait, what? No, yeah, inches. I need I need a lot more inches. Yeah. But you know
Okay.
it was the so a lot of people, I think most people in our space, it's actually race that revs pills them, because
Mm-hmm.
they grow up thinking, they hear this thing that there are no biological differences between the races, and to me, it's just so funny that anybody ever believed that.
Right.
So like, I was already way past not believing that, because I grew up with like mostly black people. But the male
Mm-hmm.
female thing, I always knew, like, there's something that we're being told here that's just not real.
Right.
And so it all relates back in this article by the futurist, which I'll find, that was about hypergamy. And so, do you know what hypergamy means?
I forget.
So hypergamy is like
You have a
this.
lot of kids with.
So no, hypergamy is the theory in biology that the female of the species mates
Oh,
for
right. Yeah, yeah.
status,
Right, right. Of
right? So
course.
he goes through like all these other animals and shows how like women mate for status. And I think,
Right, right.
like, for me, what I couldn't swallow was the fact that I knew that any one of my girlfriends, if like the right guy showed up, they would bang that guy. You know what I mean? And I like couldn't stand that
Right.
fact. I couldn't, like, it made me so jealous and so angry that that was true, and I couldn't explain it. I was like, why is this? Um, so I started digging, and I found the red pill and everything like that. And what hypergamy basically says is, actually, our world today that unmoors women from the pressure of marriage is what it does is it makes women free to mate for status. And what that
Right.
looks like is what we see, which is every woman on the app gunning for the same 10%, 1% of men, and these men just having like 5 girlfriends basically. And actually, in like their heart of hearts, women are not really upset about that. Like they would prefer to be women. The basis of this theory is that women would prefer to be the third wife of a very powerful man than the only wife of a normal man. So do you think that that's true?
That's like Tinder is just like a harem app at this point
Yes,
for
exactly.
like the Giga Chads to collect their
To collect their hair. Exactly.
all their side pieces. I mean, I guess for some women, and I would say that's probably women who are materialistic, like they want to be on a yacht, they want to have, the perfect Tiffany diamonds. Like I guess it's women who don't have the right mindset or approach to life. Sure. When I can't relate to that at all, that those women at all. Like I just, I believe in, loving, loyal, devoted, monogamous marriages. You can mate for life and you're each other's like best friend and partner. So, the ideal kind of Western concept of marriage, I totally buy into. And I think that, no, those women are just cruising for a bruising, because there's no such thing as like, well, how's that going to be? That might be the app arrangement that you have. You're the number 3 to whoever, but in real life, what are you going to be? What are you going to,
yeah, you're not going to be able to, right. Exactly.
Are you going to have sister wives?
Yeah, yeah,
no, you're just going to get dumped. You're just going to get dumped and you're going to
you're
end
never
up.
You're never going to reproduce with these, you see these women like in sports when I think I always feel this when I see like Erin Andrews interviewing the latest top quarterback and she has this starry-eyed look in her eyes.
Oh boy.
And you're just like, man, she is just like in heaven, like she's going and just like banging these like powerful guys that are just the heartthrob of the whole country. But then what happened to Erin Andrews? She turned 45 and then couldn't have kids. And that was like super regretful of it. She ended up marrying a hockey star, but she never actually satisfied the urge that she had because just as you said, each one of these alpha dudes, they can't have 5 wives. At least in this country, they can only have 1.
Right. I don't know anything about her. Like I don't watch sports, so I know who she is, but I didn't know that story. Wow, that's very interesting.
Yeah, she's like the perfect example of it. So it's like, you kind of this is what marriage, this is why they say marriage is the foundation of society, because it literally is. It's like if you don't have it, you're just going to have 5% of men having all the women, and what are the rest of the guys going to do? And what are the
right?
Well,
that's why they want to. That's why they want to convince women like her that I don't need to get married. That you can live a completely fulfilled and satisfying life with just randos. That's just as good. There's no better. Marriage is not better. It's not worse. Well, actually, marriage might hold you back, girl. Be careful.
Right.
And so when you believe that lie, which is a lie that you are taught, you just kind of like by osmosis, you take that in. Even me in Generation X, but even girls now, it's even more explicit. Marriages, it's why would you bother? Like, you got to put you first, and it'll lead to just so much misery and unhappiness. And so what, this is back to what Alex was saying about, we wish, what if we had met our spouses or whatever when we were much younger? Would we have chosen to get married then? And the answer is like, absolutely. Like, of course. Like, imagine going through more of your life with someone who's like awesome and who like actually gives a shit about you.
Yeah.
And so all the ups and downs and slings and arrows or whatever, you're with someone who like is going to help you through that. And you're not just this like floating floating like hoe, like
Yeah.
bobbing through the
Floating hoe.
waters of like guys who don't give a shit,
Yeah.
like
Right.
why would you choose that? No
Yeah.
one in their right mind would choose that. But they don't know they have the choice, because it's very, you can't graduate from like Princeton or Duke or whatever and tell your girlfriends, well, I want to get engaged this summer. Like
Yeah. Yeah. Which
they
is
would,
so weird.
yeah, you can't even utter those words unless you were raised in some like religious fundamentalist, community. Like the one I'm trying to raise my children in right now. It's really sad. It's really sad. And I'm hopeful that, like, because we made these, my husband and I both, we don't come from religious backgrounds at all or nothing. We're both secular libs. But I'm hoping that, that our children will not make the mistakes we made. They're basically marked safe from the broken culture. And I just am very, like, honestly, it's the way to go.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think for at least in terms of fulfillment, it's hard to understand how it could be any different, at least until they make multiple marriages legal and then harems really can't exist. But until then,
No,
it's like,
no thanks.
yeah, it's like, ladies, you're crazy if you think that you're gonna, and they get this look in their eyes that's just like, yeah, well, yeah, no thanks, I'm a professional, and then they go and bang, the guys that they really want to bang, but then they're ultimately unsatisfied because they can't, none of those
Yeah.
guys are gonna settle down with them and actually reproduce with them. And then not only
Right.
that, they have to pretend that they don't care. They have to pretend that, oh, what I care about is, my job at a tech company, which is like,
Right.
they don't fucking care about that. But here's what I want to ask you. So this has been a great conversation. We're not getting into any of the bullet points that I laid out here, but that's okay. So what I want to ask is, you've called yourself an anti-feminist. So what does that mean? And then how do we reconcile that with the fact that you are, in fact, a professional writer?
Oh, I don't know. I have no idea. Well, anti-feminism, like, look, I'm not an academic. I don't have like a PhD in like feminist studies or whatever. But like I've seen what, the wages of feminism and like the damage that it has caused. So I have to position myself as like, well, I'm not part of that. Like I'm against those crazy, fools, those white ants, like keep them away from me. So to me, that anti-feminism is just, rejecting fully the mainstream feminist ideology, which is like we've been discussing, like delaying motherhood until you're, quote, ready, freezing your eggs, like, marriage, a woman needs a man like a fish needs a bicycle. Like these are all giant lies. And so as an anti-feminist, you're trying to kind of like live a different way. And when those kind of things hit you, you have to just bat them away. You just swat them away. You're like, nope, not today, Satan.
Yeah. Right.
And as a writer, well, what do you mean? Like, how do I reconcile that as a
Isn't
writer?
this the most obvious question in the world for you, Peachy? I mean, think about it. What are your haters thinking right now? They're thinking, well, she says women should be in the kitchen, but why is she out there writing? I mean, like,
oh, okay,
you know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, I make it very clear in my book that, like, I'm a working mother, and I always have worked, like always. I think I took time off when I had babies, but I've always been like doing stuff. Now, of course, I have the privilege as a writer of like working mostly from home as like a starving freelancer. Okay.
Yeah.
Like no one was going to offer me a like C-suite job like that. And I don't want that damn job. I was very happy to like make my little pennies, staying at home, writing my little marketing, advertising, copy, whatever. And so, no, I do not think women belong in the kitchen. In my house, my husband is like way better cook than me. Okay. I would love to never set foot in my kitchen, frankly. Like I'm not into chores. Like I don't iron clothes. Like I'm not what you would consider like I'm not a full trad wife. Okay. Let me put it that way. Um, I haven't leaned all the way in.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that's okay. Like that's fine. I provide for my family. I cook for them. I do all that stuff. I don't love it, you know. But no, I never say women should not work. Like you should do nothing. You should be pregnant when you're 21 and wear your Amish dresses and, raise your barns on the weekends. Like, no, you don't have to do that. Like you can, like, God bless you. And like my book is about this program of like becoming a domestic extremist. Now, obviously, what I mean by that is just become extremely domestic and focus on, yourself and finding a mate and building a life and building a family. Like that's what I mean. And you don't need a farm, you don't need a homestead, you don't need to necessarily be someone who is like, a woman, but you have to stay in the barefoot and pregnant in the kitchen. Like if you want to do that, you should do that. And I think my point really is that choice has been taken away from us. Like you don't even have the choice to like, oh, no, actually I'm going to get married in my 20s and I am going to stay home with my kids.
Yeah.
And I am going to breastfeed them for like a year or two. Like, yes, I am actually going to do that. No, I'm not putting them in daycare. I'm not going to hire a night nurse. I'm going to do it myself. And that is a choice that women should be able to make. But that's not available, right? Like if you voice that, you're a freak.
Yeah.
You're an extremist. And that's what my book title is also about, because like I got treated like I was this crazy extremist when I got pregnant with my third baby. Like people would ask me, I remember this woman asked me, she saw me like visibly pregnant and I had two, I did have two like very small children at the time. I had 3 under 3, when my third was born. And she looked at me, she looked at my stomach and she's like, she of course had 2 kids because that's like the legal limit in LA. You're not allowed to go above 2. And she saw me, she's like, oh my gosh, what are you now? Some kind of Mormon? And I was like, Mormon?
Yeah.
Three kids? Like,
Yeah,
okay.
not that many.
3?
Yeah.
Like our parents had 3. Like 3 is not, that's radical, I guess, because like how do you fit 3 car seats in like your Mercedes?
Yeah.
That's her attitude. Her Mercedes. I don't have a Mercedes.
Yeah.
And so I just, since then, actually, I was like, you know what? Fuck it. I am going to be an extremist. I'm just going to lean into that. And like, yeah, I can make a living and figure out my little, like, writing gigs and stuff. Also, but my priority, it will always be to like hold my own babies. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. So it sounds like you're saying like you're not advocating for women belong in the kitchen. That's not what you're saying. You're saying basically marry a stable guy and have a lot of kids.
Yeah. Now, ideally, we would have a country that, Tucker Carlson talks about this. Like you could have a family on one income. So I understand that people are like, how do you do that? Like, that's very hard. I get it. But but I will say that, yes, when your children, and this is the hill I'm going to die on, when your children are small, the mother should be the primary caretaker of the child.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's probably going to happen in your house. So yes, that does mean you need to kind of like stay around the house while they're little, while they're very small. The first 2 or 3 years of a baby's life, they're kind of still, it's like they're kind of still part of you, And I mean, yeah. So no, you don't have to be locked in the kitchen and the husband comes home and like kicks his shoes off and you like are the little lady massaging his feet. Like, no, like no, I do not want to return to the 1950s. Of course not. But yeah, I mean, there's just hard biological facts, which is babies need their mom. I mean, that's just, can't really get around that one.
Yeah. No, I think it's so obvious when there's a great scene in, have you seen, speaking of movies, have you seen Dragged Across Concrete?
I think I did not see it. I think the title
probably
highly
recommend this film.
I've heard it's good. Yeah.
Craig Zeller is so based. And this movie is just based values laid out.
Is that Kurt Russell or is that
No, that's the one before.
That's Bone Tomahawk?
So this is Mel Gibson and Vince Vaughn.
Oh,
And
okay.
there's a scene
Okay.
in it with a woman who is a mother who's being told by her husband to go off to work.
Mm-hmm.
And she
Mm-hmm.
does not want to leave the child.
Yeah.
And he keeps being like,
Wow.
come on, just go, just go. It's like, it's fine. We need the money. We need the money. And
Oh
finally she
gosh.
goes. And of course, you know, you can guess what happens to her. But
Oh,
it's so based. It's like such a based metaphor.
wow.
And I think
Yeah.
it's so obvious, man. It's like when, you know, I have only one kid, but like when you see the mom, it's like, and the
Mm-hmm.
baby, it's just
Mm-hmm.
so obvious that
Yeah,
this
and
is the
these
natural order of things. And
right. I
to
mean,
denigrate that is so gross. And I'm just completely with you. I mean, you know, there's always going to be exceptions. There's always going to be women who genuinely don't feel that way, right? But
yeah, that's fine. That's fine. I
that's
have no problem
fine.
with
But
that.
it's like, why is our whole society based around that woman? You know,
You
like
know,
shouldn't our whole society be celebrating motherhood? And that's what's so weird and gross about about the left. It's like you say you like women, but you hate the thing that makes them women.
yeah, no, exactly. And that's you know, they want women, you know, they cry when the babies or kids are separated from their parents at the border. Like when the children are basically separated from their traffickers is who they're being separated from. But they're totally enthusiastically separating 6-week-olds from their mothers so the mothers can get right back to work.
Yeah, right. And
And
that's why, yeah.
they
It
never
really does all come back to cheap labor. I feel like, I mean, like, you know, it's they really just want cheap labor. They don't even have it, and this is just convenient for the large corporations, you know, and women are really cheap labor.
I write a lot about this in the book, which is that, you know, they're the how they need to snip the maternal bond. They need to sever that. The earlier the better. And you know, when you say goodbye to your baby for 8-9 hours a day to be raised by strangers, you know, that maternal bond, like, you know, it kind of withers. It does get a little too flabby. And maybe you'll be a little more comfortable when they're a little bit older, when they express an interest in wearing, you know, a dress if they're a boy. You know,
Yeah,
maybe
so what
that's,
is going on with that? Tell us
oh
what
my
is
gosh.
going on in the mind of a woman. You know, I feel like Sam Hyde is good on this stuff.
Right.
Like he does a better job of almost anyone. Than there's that amazing skit of his that's like a man, a young boy who's like being taught to idolize his mother, and
Oh
he
boy.
it's just all
Mhm.
warped and weird. It's so genius. Like and where I just cannot, like, what mother thinks
Yeah.
that, why do they do this? Why do they want to mutilate their children? It's like,
Right.
what, why?
Right. I mean, I think that the main driver, I mean, it's a couple things coming from the mothers, number one. It's Munchausen by proxy. You know
Yeah.
what that is.
Yep.
It's, you know, you make your child something wrong with your child. They have some kind of medical condition that requires all kinds of interventions and all kinds of, you know, fake and unhealthy medical interventions. And you become this glorified saint who is just this, look at you, what you're doing for your kid. Like, look how accepting you are and open. And just that dopamine hit is so profound. And often the women who tend to be the mothers of the young trans children are the ones who are most in need of those kinds of like affirming dopamine hits because they're often single, divorced, you know, they're
Wait,
maybe
where does
like
the dopamine hit actually come from?
it comes from the affirmation, the likes on Instagram, like
Oh,
when they announce their new
oh
daughter,
my
you know,
God.
and
Ugh.
just, oh my gosh, you are just this wonderful, you just get all of it. You're just now the Beyonce of the cul-de-sac or the trailer park or wherever, the
Yeah.
apartment block, you know? And that's just so addictive. Like there's no way off that. And they just need more bigger hits and bigger hits. And I mean, there was that great study by the the Brown researcher, her name starts with an L. I can't remember her name. Littman. Yeah, Littman. Lisa Littman, I think her name is. She did a study at Brown, and she got maybe 5 or 6, 7 years ago, and she got canceled for it when she did a psychological study of the mothers of young children who have gender dysphoria. And the conclusion, and the reason she got canceled, is because like some overwhelming percentage of those mothers had bipolar disorder. They were like, or like had borderline personalities that made them incredibly susceptible to these like online influences, right? So it's all about the mom. And I was just actually working on an essay about this. What was I calling it? Like drag queen to Electra Boogaloo or something, like trying to diving into the psychology of these women who are now taking their kids to like the drag brunch, in Plano, Texas. And like,
you made an interesting point that was like, these women are actually the same women who do the drag brunches.
Yeah, they're all the same.
Or no, sorry, the same women that do the child, like beauty pageants.
Oh, right. Yeah. Yeah, it does seem like there's a direct line from that kind of like 80s, 90s mom.
Yeah.
Who's like hypersexualizing and hyperfeminizing her like 4-year-old daughter, the JonBenet Ramsey. Like, what is that? Like that psychology, right? It's like, and I wrote an essay about this a couple years ago called Big Pimping, which was me grappling with this phenomenon of like, adult women living vicariously through their more attractive, skinnier, prettier daughters.
Yeah.
And I've seen this repeated over and over in my life. People I know who allow their daughters to present themselves to the world as these like, sexual objects of desire at very young ages, like disturbingly young. Like when I was I talk about this at essay on American Mind, Big Pimping. I was at a mom's night out for preschool. Okay. And like one of the moms asked me about my daughter, who had literally at the time was like 18 months old. And she was like, when are you planning to get her on the pill?
Yeah.
And I was like, she's 18 months old. She's like, I just can't wait for my little 1-year-old to tell me she wants ready to go on the pill. I probably as soon as she has her first period. And I was like, what? Like, get me out of here.
Well, that's called the agree and amplify cycle, right? I mean, they're doing that to test the waters, to then you're supposed to say something more, and then you all show your consensus in the group, in the giant cult.
Right. It has to be okay. If they're all doing it, I have to do it.
Right.
It's incredible peer pressure.
Yeah. I just don't know if people like that are ever, it's like, just dumbass people do that. They're not writers. They just agree and amplify ideas because they're uncomfortable. They don't, they're not really like, I don't know. They're just not fully like, yeah, it's so funny. I've experienced the same thing so many times. Somebody says something like that, and I'm just like so taken aback, and it's like, what are you talking about? So I want to ask you one more question before we run. Well, we still have like 20 more minutes, but I think this might be a long one also. So wait, hold on.
Take your time.
I completely just had it in my head and then I forgot what I was going to say.
Okay.
I guess. Oh yeah. Okay. This was it. Sorry. I think I got this in just enough time that I don't have to edit that. How do we? Okay. So what we're doing right now, we're saying that our way is better than the other way, right?
Right. Yes.
And I agree. Obviously, you have this quote in your book. I'm just going to read it. It says, I don't know exactly which part of the book this is in, but I'm just going to read it. Guess what? You already know what to do. To become a domestic extremist, all one must do is listen closely for the ancestral longings that lurk in the heart of every human being. As you listen Dormant instincts may rouse themselves from slumber. Pay attention to them. They will lead you out of the barren wasteland that stretches before us. So I think what we're saying, I don't like the word neo-reaction, because neo-reaction reduces us to just a bunch of people who are contrarians. Like we're not rooted in anything. We're just saying we don't like this. We don't have any other plan. But we just don't like what's happening. Right.
Right.
But what you're saying here, which is, I think, really deft and really smart, is no, we do have an ideology. It's just rooted in naturalism, I guess you would say. It's rooted in our natural feelings.
That's a good way to put it. Yeah.
Like natural revulsion towards certain things and everything like that. So, like, how do we differentiate between, like, I don't want, my fear is that it sounds like we're just complaining all the time. Like, how do you differentiate between just being so pissed off and disgusted by this common world, and then also like having something to say that is like, where are we basing our revulsion at the common world, at the current world from? Does that make sense?
No, what do you mean? Where are we basing it on?
Like, what is this instinct in us that tells us that the person that came up to you and says, I want my daughter on birth control as soon as she has her first period, when she's literally a baby, like, most people are not revolted by that. Where does our revulsion come from?
Yeah, so I think, the reason why you're the way you are and I'm the way I am, and why we somehow like got out of there, escape their clutches.
Yeah.
Is that, for some reason, I mean, maybe we're just like, we're just superior intellects. I mean, I don't really know, but maybe I think that somehow along the way, we encountered like some old people. Like maybe we had our grandparents or our great grandparents or some bit of like family lore that kind of stuck in us. And for me, it's about knowing that like in a not too distant past, my female ancestors were like hardcore domestic extremists. Okay. I come from like a long line of domestic extremists. And so do you. And so do all of us. Like that's the only reason we're here. That's the only reason why we like, survived all the like extinction bottlenecks, is that our ancestors were like real much better at having and feeding their babies, right? And getting them to adulthood. So maybe because I remember I have like this ancestral memory of my great grandmother and like what she had to do to like survive like pretty brutal conditions, in turn of the century Europe, and how she made it to America and like what her life was like. And so, just it's a legacy that none of us care about anymore. No one wants to honor them anymore. But maybe that for me is like, I can't like, disrespect her. Like she did all that. She got on a freaking boat and like alone, like a widow, babies died, like starving, and got to New York. Like for what? Like for me to become some like, cutting off my children's genitals and like, banging hundreds of guys. Like, no, that's not why she did that. That's not why they came through Ellis Island. Like all those peasants from Ireland and Russia and wherever they came from, like Italian, everywhere, like where are their great granddaughters now? Like it's scary to think about. Yeah. The suffering that they went through for the American dream. And like, what are we doing now? Look at us. Like we should be ashamed of ourselves.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's like a linkage to the past in some way. I think that's an interesting answer. I've never thought of it that way. Like there's some deeper linkage to the people who came before us. There's like an ancestral mandate.
I think so. I mean, people, no history is taught anymore. We only know about whatever happened since like Obama was elected. And anything that came before that was, white supremacy and fake and, but we all have these stories of these incredible ancestors, and all of our ancestors, if you go back far enough, your ancestors were based, like 100% of them were, so we all come from this long history. Human beings are base, like that. The cavemen they were not, gun control enthusiasts. Like they were just going to kill their enemies,
Yeah.
And we need to maybe embrace a little bit more of that.
It's so funny because I
Not
think
not the killing part, not the killing part. I'm a woman of
I
peace.
think the other side might say to us, though, yeah, but what about homosexuals? They've wanted to bang dudes since the beginning of times. Like, aren't they more natural? Why are we so against their form of naturalism?
Right. They keep going back and like retconning, like women as trannies. Like, who did they just say was really a man? Like oh yeah, like Emily Bronte or something.
Yeah,
she was actually a man. Emily Dickinson, she was a lesbian. Like, well, I don't know. George Washington, he wore his wife's Martha's dresses or whatever they're saying.
Yeah, and then liberalism has come to save the world for all of those poor individuals.
That's right. They were not able to self-actualize.
Yeah, they were not able to self-actualize, which is the worst thing in the world, because for them, yourself is only the choices you make, right? Like they want you in a room. Menaquin 4 said this perfectly a while ago, just clicking branded content all day. And that's yourself. Yourself is what you click on. It's like, let me click on this pill. Let me click on this identity. Let me click on, I'm just making choices. And that's my entire self. And I think you're saying, no, yourself is rooted in your family. It's rooted in your race. It's rooted in your culture. And those are not things you can decide. Whereas this individualist strain is so tempting and so delicious for so many people, because it's like, yeah, well, I do want to just decide what kind of porn I want to watch today, and I just want to do whatever my personal instinct in that moment is. And that's why it's so effective on so many people, because it's giving people what they want, even though it's actually not what they want, right? Because what people really want is to feel at home in their tribe and their culture and their natural roots.
Right. But we're also separated. And so, the atomization of the family, that you have to look for these little affirmations from strangers and you join your little cults and whatever they are.
Yeah, it's revenge of the nerds. It's like I saw Kamala. This really struck me the other day when I saw Kamala Harris shilling for Kwanzaa.
Oh my gosh.
And I learned that Kwanzaa was actually created in the 1960s, like by people who directly preceded Kamala Harris. So this is a made up holiday that like Kamala Harris is a big part of like creating. Like literally Kamala Harris is like her own religion, almost, more or less. And it just struck me that like this is a person that was so alienated from her tribe, so mixed, and so she had no pure roots at all. So she felt like she had to make this shit up. Like, of course she hates tribes and cultures and races because she feels like she doesn't have one. And like she, in response, has decided that the whole enterprise is bullshit. And I think that the people who slipped into control are that. They're people who they have no roots, so they want to destroy the roots forever.
Yeah, look at Obama's family. Right. He doesn't really, raised by his grandparents, abandoned by his mother. His father, no father, his father died. These are like rootless people.
Yeah.
And it does feel like they're saying, or they're thinking, well, I didn't have a family, and so you don't get one either.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I didn't have a culture, so culture's not real.
I didn't have a dad.
Yeah.
You don't need a dad either.
Yeah, you don't need one.
We need to bring everybody down to our level, like maybe that is the impulse behind like, producing more single mothers. The outcomes are so bad for children raised with, in single parent homes. They're so bad. Every metric is bad.
Yeah.
but
And
they
you
keep
never
they
talk, you never hear about that. Right.
no.
Yeah, no, it's really crazy.
Imagine like preaching the benefits of marriage to like the typical like, public school parent meeting, like which is like, 90%, 80% single mothers. Like you would get beheaded.
Yeah, right, right. Wow, it really is Satan. We really are up against Satan. It's like very true. Okay, let's finish this up by talking about like your process in the book. So what
Mhm.
is your writing process, and like how did you write this book?
Oh, my process. Yeah, it's very sacred, Isaac. I will share it to you because we're friends. So I drop the children off at school. I yell at them to not forget their lunch boxes. I come home, I'll like drink some more coffee, and then you just stare into the void. That's basically it. Sometimes something comes out, sometimes it doesn't want to come out. Um, when I was doing the book, that was like so crazy because, like writing a 1,500 word essay for American Mind or like a, tiny little tweet is one thing. But like they wanted me to write 80,000 words. Okay. So like, how do you do that?
Wait, who is they though? Who is they?
Well, that was my contract. This is how long the publisher, Regnery, so it's like you have
Well,
to
no,
write
I
it.
don't. So can we know about how? I don't know how detailed you want to get, but can we know like how that came about?
Oh, how I got my book deal? Just
Yeah.
basically, one of the editors of Regnery literally slid into my DMs on Twitter. That was it. And he's like, "Hey, I want you to write a book." So they came to me, which is
Wow.
super, super flattering.
Great.
I never had to like pitch or do any proposals. That I did have to write. He's like, "Well, I think it'd be great. You do need to write your proposal. I'll bring it to the like whatever acquisition meeting and we'll go from there." So I was like, "All right, fine." So I was like, what do I write about?
How
So
many followers did you have at that point?
I think I had when I got the deal, I had like 8,000. So
Wow. And that was how long had you been shit posting, for lack of a better word? Although you don't really do shit posting, you do more like political posting. But yeah, what?
I dabble.
Yeah.
Peachy was born July in 2019. I started writing for American Mind in 2019, and then I got the book deal the fall of 2021.
Yeah.
And so I spent like the first half of 2022 last year just like writing and writing, writing. So basically on the weekends, I would have to just like lock myself in my little writing corner, and my husband like had to take over. There was just no option. But he's, very supportive. He has very high tea, but he's a very supportive guy. And then sometimes I would like over spring break when the kids had spring break, I went to my mother's house and she literally would like bring me tuna fish sandwiches, like, while I just typed. And so when you're writing a book, you just have to sit down and do it.
Yeah. Wow.
It sucks. I'm not going to lie. God bless any of you who are writing books. It's a supposedly fun thing I may never do again, but it's a great process. It's really fun.
So how did you structure it? Like, how you like, because you write sort of topical essays. So how did you structure the larger narrative of the book?
Right. So, I wanted to make it like a little bit actionable, a little bit practical. Like there's no like recipes or whatever, like, homeschooling guides. That's not what it's about. But I did want to make it feel like not this super abstract, kind of high-minded philosophical thing. So I just basically, you should pre-order the book, all of you out there, by the way. Comes out in June. It's basically two parts, part one, part two. And part one is like, here's what they took from you. Here's what you lost. Here's what you should have, but you don't have anymore. And then part two is how to get it back. So it's very simple. It's very direct. I tried to make it, entertaining, fun to read, but also with, some important messages, hopefully. It's an important book, Isaac. It's very important. I've written a very important book.
Well, it's great that you completed it with such efficiency. Was the editing process annoying or was it pretty smooth?
No, that was great. Tony, my editor, like he was, you know, he had a very light touch with me. He went very gentle with me. It was my first time. So it wasn't like I was worried like, oh no, I'm going to have to rewrite billions of words, but it wasn't like that at all. It was like a few notes and we're done.
Wow, that's great.
Yeah.
So do they have a PR campaign scheduled for you, or are you going to go be on a bunch more podcasts?
I'm actually, yeah, I think they will put me on different interviews with different people. You know, they were like, one of the things they were like, well, you know, we really want you to do Tucker. I was like, my mother was like, I told it to my mother, you know, she's like a huge Tucker fan. She's like, okay, we can take you wig shopping. We'll get you like a wig. We'll get you sunglasses so no one will recognize you. Like, I'm not going on Tucker, like a Hadassah wig. Okay. So we'll see. We'll see where I end up.
So did mom also become based later in life, or was she always?
Well, I have a slight advantage over you because my parents were Reagan Republicans.
Yeah, okay.
They were secular atheists and, you know, socially liberal, but they were like, you know, National Review subscribers and all that stuff. But I rebelled against that. You know, I thought that was lame. Like I don't need that. Like I was like a, you know, vocal pro-choice, militant pro-choice feminist, you know, starting in high school, to my mother's dismay.
Yeah.
So, you know, I think it can go both ways. I think that you know, if you were a conservative and you're trying to like get those kind of like, you know, drill those values into your children, it really does help. They'll take root much better if you have some kind of religious something going on. That was probably the missing piece. And my parents, you know, are boomers, so they were not necessarily living like what I would consider like, you know, ultra conservative lifestyles. They're, you know, we're like, I had a very, you know, privileged childhood and like, you know, near the beach in Los Angeles. So it was not really like a trad life, you know?
Yeah. All right. Interesting. Cool. All right. Well, thank you so much, Peachy. Let's say where we can find all of your stuff.
Oh, okay, great. Yeah, I write about once a month for the American Mind, and I just started a Substack, and I'm actually super excited about my new Substack, which you should all subscribe to for free right now, or you can pay me if you want, but you can please sign up for free. It's peachykeenan.substack.com. I just wrote last week an essay that sort of went viral about bad public art. You know, I was inspired by the Martin Luther King statue in Boston, and the essay is called Pubic Art. So you should all check that out. And then my main website is peachykeenanwrites.com, where you can read about my book and stuff.
Awesome. Okay, last question. What advice would you have for people in our space who want to be doing what you do?
You know, there's a lot of talk about like, well, do you need to have 10,000 hours to get good at something? And like, you know, honestly, to write well and to be pithy and, you know, you just got to do it a lot. So just keep tweeting is my advice to you.
Keep on tweeting.
That's right. Tweet through it. Just keep on tweeting.
Tweet on through. Okay. Cool. Thank you so much. And yeah, we'll be talking soon.
Awesome. Thanks a lot, Isaac. This is fun.